What's going on, world? And welcome back to the Pursuit of the Good Life podcast, your favorite podcast that helps you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host with the most, your favorite coach, the Cameron Lovelace, joined by a very special guest of mine. I told y'all on last week's episode, we are starting the Dreams and Nightmares edition, where we're bringing on successful people who have been killing it in different career paths. And I know that a lot of people want to grow in the field of education. There are a lot of people who grow up, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a principal, I want to be a superintendent, I want to impact the world through the fields of education. And I am so lucky to have somebody in my circle that has done a ton of things in education. He has been a teacher, he has been a principal, he has been a superintendent, he has worked at the Department of Education. He's a legend in the state of Arkansas. I gotta say, he's humble, but I gotta give him his props that he's a legend in the realm of education in the state of Arkansas. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Jeremy Owoh. What's going on, Dr. Owoh?
I'm well, Cameron. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm excited about joining you today.
Man, I'm good. I just got back from the least favorite place that you want to be, and that's the DMV. And so
Oh,
with coronavirus going on right now, you can imagine the lines are
yeah,
very long. So
yeah, I can definitely imagine that. We were scheduled to go in January for the inauguration, but those plans were canceled
mhm.
because of the increase in numbers. So we'll just join virtually like we do most everything else these days. So
So, so tell me how has things been with in the last year? First of all, who would thought like when we locked down, everything shut down back in March, that here we are in January, like we're still
right.
dealing with all this.
Right. Is no one would have thought. I mean, there were so many speculations that when the summertime or months hit, that would kill the virus and things would return to normal. And then there were some speculations when the wintertime hit, then it will decrease the numbers. And so yet we're approaching January 2021 and we're still dealing with high numbers and increasing rate, and that definitely has impacted the educational realm. And so we're constantly making adjustments. But we've always stated as educators that we're the gurus of monitoring and adjusting. But this pandemic has really caused us to really match our words with our actions. So it's been an interesting journey, but I really feel like there's several positive aspects um, out of this situation, and I think we've definitely learned a lot of things um, that will positively impact our students as we move forward.
Great, great. So before we jump into it, what would you say? So I always like to start off with something a little fun. So since you are, an educational guru, what would you say? What kind of character? So there's the infamous the Joe Clark from Lean on Me. There's the teachers across several different movies and several different TV shows. Which teacher would you say most accurately reflects your teaching style or how you are in the classroom or from a principal perspective? Because I don't want to say you, Mr. Clark. I don't think
That's
you
fun.
that assertive, but I could be
That's
wrong.
funny that you asked, Cameron, because my students, former students, when I was principal, and teachers will probably tell you I was a little bit of Joe Clark, and but my students, when I was teacher, would tell you the movie. What is the movie? When the students learn to write and what is the lady's name? I cannot think of that movie, but the
Not the
writers.
Soul Riders,
Who?
the Soul Riders with the
No, it
white
wasn't
lady in the
Soul
high
Riders. It was something close to that, but it was where the teacher
Freedom
worked
Riders.
with this. Who?
Was it Freedom Riders?
Freedom Riders.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And ironic thing about me not remembering is that I actually taught that novel as well as the showed the movie in my students' class because I taught English. Most people have known me as an administrator more so as an English teacher, but I actually taught ninth and 10th grade English and creative writing. And that was really the essence. That movie really showed the essence of how I felt like I was as a teacher and how some of my students actually described me as a teacher because I really felt like, especially as African Americans, it was so important that we really took the time to find our voice in our writing because that's one of the things people could not ever take away from you. Once you have found your voice and your rhythm in writing, I mean, that could take you to many situations, open several doors. And so I really missed teaching, and I really do miss teaching because I feel like that movie describes um, what I tried to emulate in the classroom. Now, when I became a principal,
Mm,
because I knew that order, I knew consistency, um, just organization really was important to make sure that students, teachers, support staff members knew why we were in the instructional setting. And so and coming into JA Fair as my first high school principalship, that was the task at hand is to make sure we put some rules and rituals and routines in place. And so I didn't carry a bat around, but my students quickly figured out that I was no nonsense when it came to being in class, being prepared, being respectful, and making sure that they'd adhere um, to their responsibilities in the classroom. I mean, I the students knew that I was if I'm not going to pass you off to an assistant principal. If I catch you in the hallway and
mm,
you're supposed to be in class, you're coming to my office and
oh,
we're calling your parent. And but then in the same essence, I'm asking you how your grades are. And then so when report time comes or came, they knew that I was going to ask. And so they came up to me during lunchtime or during transition to show me their grades because I'm going to follow up because the goal was to make sure that they took ownership of their educational experience because I already had my diploma. The teachers had their diplomas. The students needed to make sure that they were doing their part because I was going to make sure the teachers did their part.
mhm,
And so I think they would tell you I was Joe Clark because Joe Clark he was firm, but the kids knew that he cared a lot about them,
yeah.
and that's how I felt about my students and my staff members. I want you knew what your expectations were, and I'm going to hold you to the expectation. And but I'm also going to make sure that you have the tools and the resources you needed to be successful. So
Makes sense. Makes sense.
long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, and I'm pretty sure the people that are listening, like the students that are rewatching this, they're probably like, absolutely, that's factual. So tell me what made you want to become a teacher and get into education?
Cameron, that's the odd thing about my journey. I actually started, so I attended University of Central Arkansas, and for the first 4 years uh, 3.5 years that I was there, I started off as a business marketing major.
Okay.
I wanted to do marketing, and I'm still to this very day interested in just uh, the background, the functionality of marketing and how to put things out there uh, to uh, to capture people's attention and interest. But I realized that going to the office like that every day was not something I wanted to do. I started to really detest my business classes. I
Mm,
just did not want to do that. But during my collegiate years, during the summer, I always volunteered at a youth camp, and I realized I really enjoyed working with youth. And I always had a strong passion for literature. My English teachers had some really great English teachers in high school, and my mom really um, cultivated a sense of importance in reading since an early age. She during the summer, even in grade school and elementary school, she would take us to the library. We would check out all of these books, Hardy Boys. I mean, you think about it. I mean, you think of all the youthful novels. I've
Showing
read them.
age, showing your age.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
The library.
Boxcar Children, but anyway, so I had a passion for literature. So I said, well, let me test out some English education classes. Cameron, I loved it. I quickly changed my major the second semester of my senior year. And 2 years later, a year and a half later,
You said at the senior year,
senior year,
second
senior
semester,
year,
you're supposed to be graduating.
I'm supposed to be graduating, and realized that I did not want to do that, and changed it to English education. And a year and a half later, because I took summer classes, I graduated with my English education degree and haven't looked back since. I mean, that that journey, that decision has really been one of the most worthwhile decisions I've made, because now that I look back over the career that I've had, that I'm having, um, I was fortunate to listen to that inner voice to tell me to follow my passion, follow my dream. So
That's good. That's good. Because a lot of people, I'm sure, need to hear that. Because a lot of people might just, you know what, I'm already I got, 120 credits already just ready to go. Like, let me just go ahead and just finish out this semester and then I'll get a job and be miserable for the rest of my life. But you said, nah, I'm a pivot. Well, let me not say pivot, because pivot is probably the most overused word of 2020. I'm a
right,
I'm a switch completely and go to what my passion is. And I think a
yeah,
lot of people need to do that more.
yeah.
So
I mean, I think because I always heard people, some mentors of mine have always said, your passion is going to make room for you. And that's so true. You're going to, if you're in the field that you're passionate about, that's going to be the drive that you need, the determination that you need to be successful. You're going to be successful. And not just professionally, but fiscally too, financially too, because if you're driven, if that's where your passion is, you're going to give all that you have into that. And that's going to be not only just your professional life, but also part of your personal life. And that's what education has become for me. I've always thought that I could separate professional from personal, but when you have students who come up to you years after you've taught them or served as their principal, and they tell you how impactful you were for them, that's personal. That's that personal gratification that I am serving a greater purpose in life, more than just for myself, that I'm following my dreams, but I'm also helping others to achieve their dream. And that's really, I believe, the true definition of success is not what you personally gain or accomplish. It's the fact of how many people you have helped achieve their professional and personal accomplishments or goals. And to me, that's where the success comes from. So it becomes more than just professional, but personal, because you feel like you are living life purposefully.
mhm,
So
that's good. That's good. So how does one like excel in the educational arena? Because I know usually if you want to get promoted or get have a chance to become a principal, you're going to at least need your master's. And then I know to like be a superintendent, you need to at least have your doctorate. And so like explain, like, is that true? And then two, like what would you say your the most like if you were telling somebody that's a teacher, this is what you need to do to be a successful teacher, like, well, professionally, because I know there's of course the administrative side, and then there's the in classroom side as well. So walk us through, take us behind the curtain on your how you've
So
been
you,
successful.
so Cameron, you're 50-50 correct with that. I'll tell you that to be a superintendent, there are more superintendents who do not have their doctorate
Mm,
than those who do. But I'll explain that. So yes, to first you have your bachelor's in education, so you teach. Most states will require you to teach for at least 3 years before
mhm,
you can start an admin or educational leadership program. So you can do that with your master's or your educational specialist. And I tell you, I coming into education, I came in looking at my end goals, where I wanted my journey to head, and so I started looking at my path and kind of drafting my pathway, even when I first started teaching. And I knew I wanted to be an administrator because I always wanted to be in the position to have the greatest impact. And so I felt like when I was principal, when I become principal, then I can dictate the instructional setting. So I can make sure that all of my students receive the very best education. I can make sure that all of my teachers have the support and resources that they need. And so as a teacher, I knew I wanted to be an administrator. So, but I also knew as a teacher that the education profession paid you according to the degrees that you had. And so the first 15 hours you have masters, you get a pay increase, the
mhm.
next 30 and so forth. But if I realized that I couldn't start an educational leadership program until 3 years after I taught 3 years. Well,
Right.
I didn't want to wait 3 years to get that pay increase. So I my master's is actually in secondary education with the emphasis of reading and writing. So I went on, and when I started teaching at Parkview High School here in Little Rock, I started that master's program, and then after I completed that, I was able to start the educational specialist degree program.
Mhm.
And for most professions, well, for the education profession, we have that EDS program, which is in between your master's and your
Right.
doctoral program, and it's your called your educational specialist. So I have an educational specialist degree in ed leadership. So that program gave me the opportunity to sit for the principal license, the building level admin certification, as well as the superintendency certification. So when I completed my EDS degree, I was licensed to be a building principal, but also a superintendent. And so that's before I got my doctorate. Now, I tell people that my personality and my goal was when I went to an interview, I didn't want the people who were interviewing me to have any reason not to hire me based on my credentials and experience, other than they just chose not to hire me. And so that's the reason why I pursued my doctorate.
That's such
And
an alpha mentality.
right. And so I started my doctoral program, and that's the reason why I became. And my doctorate is in education administration, but I already had a degree in that. But that journey was a life learn. It was a learning experience. That definitely was an interesting journey within itself. But so that's the program. So you can either get your master's or EDS degree in school administration, and then go from that. And a lot of people don't realize when you get your ed specialist degree, a lot of universities will take those 2 years and apply it to your doctoral degree. And so you can be even closer to receiving your doctorate. And I've seen a lot of that. A lot of the young men and women that I mentor, um, I always encourage them to go back and get their ed specialist and then their doctorate, because um, I always feel like effective teachers, even when you're a really good teacher, you cannot forget the fact that effective teachers need effective leaders. And so we need those strong teachers who are in the classrooms to be strong leaders, because our teachers benefit when they have leaders who understand the path, the journey that they're walking, and never forget that. And so we need strong leaders just as much as we need strong teachers.
Right. So I want to make sure I'm gonna make sure I understand what you're saying, because you saying you came in to education thinking of the end in mind. Like you already said, like I want to be an administrator, whether that's whatever position that this school has or another school has, I'm looking to do. So I'm immediately coming in thinking, okay, what can I do in this first 3 years to get myself in a better position? So you get your master's in secondary education. Then he's like, okay, that ed specialist degree is going to be a game changer for me. Boom, let me go ahead and get that. And then you said, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe just like educational torture, I don't know. Then you said, I'm gonna go get the doctorate, I'm gonna do the dissertation. But that was your mindset from the start.
Yes, yes,
And so
it
why
was.
why don't teachers have that? I don't want to say all teachers, but you've seen teachers who teach the same position for 10, 12, 15 years and just stay
30 years.
in the classroom. Yeah, they just stay in the classroom.
And I think it's going back to your passion. I when I first started teaching English, I was working alongside a teacher who had been in the classroom for over 30 years teaching English, and she loved literature, she loved teaching it, she
Mhm.
loved teaching grammar. And you have some teachers who are really passionate about that, and that's great. And so it's really, and to be honest, Cameron, that's, I always remind people there's so many different uh, roles within the education profession that um, if you're interested in education, it's just not what we grew up seeing is you have the teacher or the principal. There's so many other aspects or roles within the education profession that you could really, if you're interested in law, but
Mhm.
also education, there's a major need for educational lawyers
Mhm.
because there's a shortage in Arkansas. Right now, I can count on one hand the number of attorneys that specialize in educational law, and everyone uses them in the state. And so,
Mhm.
but a lot of people don't realize that that's a field that you can go in and there's a high need. Even when I worked at the State Department here in Arkansas, I realized we have a office, a department just for lawyers, educational lawyers. And there's if you're interested in policy, there's a major field in educational policy. We at the department we had an office just for the legislative liaison and that person, those people work with, was the liaison between the department and the legislators in the governor's office. And so there's so many different areas in education that people don't realize that you can work in.
Right.
And so a lot of people, my suggestion is just find your passion, what you love. And you see that a lot of teachers would say, I don't want to leave the classroom. And I think that's important. That's a major need. We need teachers, those strong teachers, to stay in the classroom.
Hmm. I didn't think about it like that. I'm not gonna lie to you. So what makes a so we're gonna go piece by piece here. So what makes a successful teacher, and then what makes a successful principal, and then because I know you've done superintendent and then you've worked at Department of Education beyond the principal role. What makes successful like at each level? What does a person need?
I think just understanding what you're passionate about and always making sure that you put the students' needs first. I always tell people, even in the classroom, at the building level, at the district level, when you make decisions that are student focused, student driven, and not adult driven, then you you are making the very best decision at that time. And so I think it's important that we don't forget that um, the only reason why we have the jobs that we have are because of those students who come to us each and every day. And if we're not impacting their growth, then we're not doing what the community has charged us to do. And I think that we always need to remember that all of our kids, every single last, not 99%, but 100% of our students have to deserve to be provided the resources, the tools, the educators that they need to be successful, to achieve their highest potential. And so I think that's one of the major facets, important aspects of our profession.
Gotcha. So so at whatever level, you just need to have the student's best interests first and make sure that they are in the best position to continue to move forward and grow and be successful. And so, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So if you're intent, so and it really sounds like you're like because like you said, your definition is of success is not what have I accomplished, but what have I helped other people accomplish. It sounds like if you have a spirit of that coming into this game, then you'll win at whatever level that you finish at.
Yeah, and you will, and I tell people that even teachers deserve more pay. I will always be an advocate for more pay for teachers, but the teaching profession is so gratifying because you're impacting students. But also, as retirement, we have one of the best retirement systems um, in the nation, and more so Arkansas teacher retirement. And so I really feel like people have really forgotten how beneficial teaching is personally and just as a profession period, because you could really be very successful um, based on how you impact people's lives, but also setting yourself up for retirement and life after you leave the education system. Because I know teachers who've retired at 55, 60, and they're set for the rest of their life, and they're able to do other things. Some have become legislators,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so it's definitely a career that you could feel you will see the benefits of your labor, I should say.
Right. Okay. So speaking of like you said that teachers don't get paid a lot. Teachers also make a whole lot of sacrifice. Like I know several people who are teachers who they say well, I can't go out tonight. I got to grade papers. Like I got to sit and I got to have my Netflix on TV and I got to grade these papers or I got to do these assignments. There's a lot of personal sacrifice outside of the classroom, outside of the hours of 7 to 4 and beyond. There's a lot of personal investment. How does somebody balance? I know that's self-care is probably the most hated word. I think a lot of my teacher friends is like they tell us, take care of yourself all the time, but I still got to get this work done. So how does somebody that is, in this profession, how do they balance that personal investment as well as their educational requirements?
Wow, great question. In short, I would say when you find out the answer, let me know uh, because it's tough to balance that. Because I mean, as you were talking about grading papers, um, that was really my life because I was an English teacher and I had multiple essays to grade. I was newly married, and
Mhm.
so juggling being a newlywed and grading papers. I was student council co-sponsor, and so I was doing a lot of things with that. Um, it's tough to have a happy balance. But I think the most important thing, and I've told um, some young male administrators that I've talked to is that the important thing is when you are married and you have a family, make sure that they're a part of your professional setting as well. And so I'll take Jackson, my son, to games with me when I had to have duty. Any events, social events, I would have Katrina and Jackson to join me, and so they become part of my profession. So when they see that I may have a long night, or if I have to go out of town for a school function, they know why and they understand that. And I think that for family life helps me balance the two because they're part of the work that I do. And so now when my students or when my staff members see my wife in out in the public, they say, "Oh, you Mr. Owoh's wife," and I mean she loves that, but she also sees how they feel about me, and so to me, family life that helped me balance family life. Just personally dealing with because it does get stressful. And so self care is important. I think educators need to always realize, as much as possible, the weekend is your time.
Mm-hmm.
These holidays, I think there's a reason why most educators, because I don't anymore because I'm an administrator, but most educators have 9 and a quarter, 10 months of work and then the other months off because they need that time to recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
Spring break is a time that they need to recuperate, spend time with family because it's stressful because you're dealing with um, other people's kids,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a tug of war at times with what you're teaching your students in the classroom versus what they're learning outside the school building. And so the students, and a lot of times as educators, we don't realize that students are growing. And so they're learning in school, but also just from society, from their community where they're living in. And so there's a tug of war with them. And so really trying to educate our students, not just with academics, but about life, that's stressful at times. And so it's very taxing. That's why I say that you cannot pay teachers or building level administrators
Mm-hmm.
enough because their job is as stressful, if not more stressful than I think medical doctors, attorneys, because it's you have a young person's life in your hand and you are in charge of molding that life and people are deeply impacted positively and negatively from their educational experience by what teachers have said, by what principals have said. And so I think there's a lot of expectations, and so I was kind of long-winded on that response, so
Nah,
sorry.
I get it. I get it.
What's up, guys? We all know that in order to create your version of the good life, you have to have a fulfilling career. And that's why today's episode is sponsored by the Dreams and Nightmares Career Exploration Program. It's that awesome program that helps your students build a foundation based on their strengths and even weaknesses, explore the world of work, and create a step-by-step plan to turn their dreams into a reality. Now, it includes an e-course, it includes an assessment, it even includes a 90-day coaching program and a group experience for those mentoring groups in nonprofit organizations. It is the awesome career program designed by yours truly to help your student, whether you're in college or whether you're in high school, really know how to turn your dream career into a reality and to avoid those deep, dark nightmares. Now, for those of you that are adults and are not students anymore, don't worry, I didn't leave you out either. Today's episode is also sponsored by the Welcome to the Jungle program. The Welcome to the Jungle program is the program designed to help you grow both personally and professionally by helping you master yourself. We do this by helping you master the 4 dominant animal personality traits that everybody has, which includes the dominant lion, the inspirational flamingo, the supportive chameleon, and the very cautious turtle. Conquering these animals is the key to not only dominating in your professional life, but also knowing how to thrive in your everyday jungle with your family and your relationships. So be sure to check out these 2 programs at www.goodlifetc.org/dreams and /W2J. And now back to the show.
Because and it's important for people to hear that, because you got to realize like the teachers that your child goes to school with, they are around them for essentially 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
For so they have the opportunity, I want to say opportunity especially, to impact and positively push your child in the direction that they might not even see for themselves. So
Right.
yeah, this is long-winded is fine. My next question, however, is what is it like to be in the Department of Education versus in a singular school?
Hey, Cameron, that was one of the life changing moments for me professionally and personally, because I knew that we had these directives, these regulations that were given to us at the school level from the state level and the federal level. But the process on how those regulations, those policies came into fruition was very eye opening. I came into, when I was appointed as assistant commissioner, that was when the new Educational Act was being completed or formulated. And so the states had to take the federal Every Student Succeeds Act and craft their state level act from it and procedures. And so I was assistant commissioner over educator effectiveness. So that meant anything that dealt with educational preparation programs at the university
Mhm.
level, um, teacher licensure, professional growth, all of that was under my division. And so I had to craft that section with my team of leaders, that law, that part of policy. And then, of course, it had to be approved by the state legislature. But it was really eye opening for me to see how the law, then the state rules set or were formulated, then moved or trickled down or progressed to become school levels, school district policy. And
Mhm.
then to be able to see how every district in the state operated gave me a better understanding of the need for diversity, educational equity, inclusion across the state. Because even when you, and no one really thought would think about it, but when we think about preparing teachers, are we preparing teachers for just a certain segment of our society, or all communities of our society? And I mean that by meant, and what I learned is that, and what I really made sure that my team started to focus on, is that if a student teacher was going through the ed prep program at U of A, and they
Mhm.
interned at Bentonville, Springdale, Fayetteville school districts, are they prepared to educate students who are in Pine Bluff or
Oh
in
no.
El Dorado, Arkansas?
Yeah, no.
And so are we really preparing our teachers to be successful? Because that's a completely different set of community needs and expectations
Right.
from Bentonville, Arkansas to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And so as a state, we needed to do a better job in ensuring that our teacher candidates have more diverse learning experiences or teacher internship. And so that was some of the work that we started there. And then we also started to look at the demographics of our teachers and realized that was less than 1% of all the teachers in the state were African American males or Hispanic males. And research would tell you, just qualitative and quantitative, that not just our African American students, but all of our students from all demographics, uh, they have to have and it's important that they have a diverse slate of educators
Mhm.
in race and experience and culture. And we as a state, that was our role, and to ensure that the diversity was there. And so we started to look, and we launched this Teach Arkansas 2.0 of really encouraging and looking at the root causes of why we didn't have diversity in our teacher workforce. And it came down to, for some, were licensure programs
Mhm.
or licensure exams. A lot of African Americans were not passing those exams. And so when we started looking at the reasons why, it was some culture um, barriers. It's just a way northeast. A lot of those licensure exams were developed in northeastern part of the country.
Mhm.
Well, that's a different culture, different language community than southern.
So you're saying the federal foundation, they are designed by people in the Boston, New York, Maine area.
Well,
They
that's
design that
where
for the entire country?
that's where your praxis. When you look at your teacher licensure and even administrator licensure exams, those praxis is the main one. Praxis
Right.
and Pearson.
Right.
Well, they're all in Northeast, and so a lot of their um, committees, a lot of the test writers are coming from that speech community up there, from that experience community up there. And so when you when you have an educator like me who born in the South in Camden, who look at it, I'm going to respond to questions not only orally or written differently than someone from the northeast or northwest or central part of the country. But
Mhm.
I'm also going to have a different point of view, a different set of experiences. But if you're grading my responses on that exam based on your bias, based on your experience, then I'm not going to be successful on it. And so that's what we started to really look at is those licensure exams. What could we do as a state
Mhm.
to remove that barrier? And so, in short, that experience at the department opened a lot of eyes, and I really felt like prepared me more to be a superintendent than being an assistant soup, then moving to a superintendent. So I was fortunate to go from assistant soup to assistant commissioner, then superintendent, because I had that knowledge of how the the state level and the federal level actually function, and the reason why we have certain laws and the flexibility that we have as well, that a lot of districts don't realize that you have within there, and a lot of opportunities that you have um, that you may not know at the district level. And so that experience really was very beneficial professionally and personally for me as an educator.
Do y'all see why I selected this man to come on the podcast? Do y'all see why I needed this educational guru to come and drop, like, pull behind and see why it's important to have a successful career in education? But keep that going. So what is it like now? You said you're a superintendent now, currently?
No, I was. So I was superintendent of schools of Pine Bluff, and then after 2 years there, I decided to come back home to Little Rock, and so now currently I'm the deputy superintendent for Little Rock School District.
Okay, so explain to me like what those levels are, because you've said assistant, you said super, and now you're saying deputy. So what all, break those down.
So assistant soup is usually they typically could be the second people in charge after the superintendent. Deputy soup is the next level. You have more responsibility and you really function as that second person in charge after the superintendent. But most superintendents would leave the deputy superintendent like as the final say in particular areas, whereas assistant soup has not as much decision making power. So at in Little Rock, and then superintendent, of course, has the final say within the district. But like for example, my position here in Little Rock as deputy superintendent, I
Mhm.
oversee everything that deals with the licensed staff members, academics, school leadership, pretty much anything that really impacts the schools and the students, whereas our chief financial officer and chief operations officer, Kelsey Bailey, handles everything that deals with the support staff, the support arm of the district. And so that's the way we're set up. So it's our superintendent, me, that handles everything that deals with instruction, academics, all of that. And then Kelsey, who oversees everything support staff like security, maintenance, child and nutrition, things of that nature.
So what does the superintendent do? That's what the assistant. That's what the CFO. That's what the COO. What is the super? What the head man, the head woman in charge? What does that person do?
Well, and it really depends on the size of your district. Like when I was in Pine Bluff as superintendent,
Mm-hmm.
I did a little bit of everything. I mean, I, because you have less staff. Well, here in Little Rock, and I had about 3,000 students there, and maybe 500 total staff members there in Pine Bluff. Well, here in Little Rock, we have a little over 21,000 students
Mm-hmm.
and over 2,000 licensed staff members and probably double that in support staff. And so the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district. And so he does a lot of media uh, um, and community um, duties and just making sure that making decisions. He's the final say. And so, and really, so the buck definitely stops with him. And so he has to all the information that I bring to him, all the information that Kelsey brings to him, he has to be okay with it and give his um, final signature to it. And so at this with this size of a district, you really wouldn't want him, the superintendent, to be so hands-on and everything because he has to have a holistic view, a full picture of all operations, all aspects of the district. And so you would want people like Kelsey and I to funnel up to him because everything comes to me and I review it, I dissect it. And so by the time it makes it to him, when I meet with him, then he knows everything has been vetted. And so he can move forward with it. Any interviews, any meetings with the State Department, federal government, things of that nature, he handles all of that. And so you kind of need his schedule to be free of all the hands-on activities, so to
Gotcha.
speak. And that's where you will see a lot of the larger districts how they operate because you have more community obligations as because Little Rock is the second largest school district in the state. We fluctuate between first and second with Springdale,
Oh,
but there's a lot of community. You said what?
I was like, they're not the biggest. I was surprised.
Oh,
Okay.
it's and it's only about 500 to 800 students difference. So depending on what the each year is like, you fluctuate. But you know the superintendent has a lot of community obligations, and
Mhm.
so he or she has to be able to meet those obligations. So
Okay. But what does it take to get to those administrative positions at the head office? Because I know, so you know when you're at it, when you're the teacher, your focus is, I want to give the best to students, give them the tools they need to succeed. When you're a principal, you're doing that for the students and for the staff. So when you move to like a central office position, what is the need there? Is it still focused on students first, or
yeah.
what does that look like?
It is. It is. At each level, every level, even at the state level, you need to be focused on the student because if you're focused on the student needs, and then you're going to make sure that or ensure that you're focused on any barriers that the educators may have.
Mm,
To ensure that the students receive the very best education, and at the district level, that's really what's more important is removing barriers, or I always say excuses and barriers that will impede the educational process at the school level. I remind everyone who rolls up to me at the district office that our job is not to create more barriers for our teachers, students, parents, principals. Is to remove them. So I'm not about to micromanage what happens there. They're in the classroom, they're in the school building. So our job is to make sure that they have the resources. Are they looking at the data? Are they making data driven decisions based on what the student needs are? And then, if so, what barriers are there that we need to remove? And so, my first or last question that I always ask my direct reports, my executive directors that report to me, what are barriers that I need to, what are the barriers that I need to assist you with to remove? Because to me, if they can't function at the district level, effectively, then that's a roadblock for my students, my teachers, my principals. And so our job is to make sure we remove all of those barriers. And it's not to teach. I can't teach from a district office. I can't run a building from a district office.
Right.
And so my primary job is to make sure I remove all barriers, every roadblock that would impede instruction from taking place in that classroom.
So essentially, your job is to make their job easier.
Yeah,
Solid. Okay.
yeah.
I'm starting to get. I'm starting to get it. So with
You
you,
make those tough decisions. I mean, and you have to. That's why it's so important to have leaders
mhm,
who
know what you're.
have the enough courage, know what we're doing, have the experience. Um, because I always tell you, and this is a bird walk, short tangent, that I wouldn't be able to be a successful deputy superintendent, or assistant commissioner without having the experience as a principal, as an assistant principal, as a teacher, as a student, and as a parent. To me, all of those experiences gives me give me a better perspective and outlook
Mm,
on my current role,
mm,
because you have to, as at the district level and even at the state level, you cannot make decisions, sound decisions, effective decisions, wise decisions, without every everyone who's going to be impacted by those decisions. You have to have um their perspective, their point of view, uh, in that thought process, and their and what's best for them.
mm.
That's what I was looking for. You always have to keep in mind what's best for them, and I think that's why experience is so important. Because I tell my principals all the time that I understand the stress that they have, because they get pulled from, I mean, in every direction. I think the toughest job in a school system is a building principal, because you have to answer to to the district office, to the community, to the parents, to the
Mhm.
teachers, to the students. So so it's tough, but I think people need to realize how important their job is at the level that they're currently working in. Um, and you move up based on that. I mean, I really feel like the very best principal is those great effective teachers who were in the classroom. The best assistant soup and superintendent are those effective teachers who became effective principals who moved up, because you keep in mind the people, the most important group of people in the school system, and those are our students.
Mhm.
So, um, and I think those are the things that we have to always keep in mind.
Man,
So,
so what I'm hearing you say is that even though you had like the end in mind, you had that you wanted to be an administrator, you still recognize I've got to master the role that I'm at right now first. I got to put everything that I can to be successful. Well, in being successful meaning helping the students. I got to help the people who are under my domain right now. So at the teacher level, that means I'm going to help my students learn how to read, learn how to write, get into college, do this, that, and the third. Principal, I'm going to do that, plus help the teachers do that. And then at the administrator level, I'm helping, different systems, help them put different systems in place, helping them overcome the roadblocks from the deputy commissioner level. I'm helping that on a on a state level, but it's all about mastering and maxing out where you're at. Not necessarily thinking about ahead, but let's just do the best that I can in this role that I'm at right now.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Cameron. My when I first became a teacher, um, my two of my mentors told me at two different times that your interview for your next position is your current position. And so you're while you're working in your current position, you're interviewing for your next position. So what you do
Mhm.
now will dictate how far you can go in the future. And so it's not just about, and that to me meant more than just saying that, you're going to do what you can so you can show people that you've had this experience so you could do this, is that your level of commitment, your level of passion should speak for itself. So people should know your work even before you open your mouth, because they've seen your
Mhm.
work ethic in your current position. And Cameron, I'll be honest, that's where I've been fortunate. I've been blessed because every position that I've gotten past, I mean, teacher position is based on word of mouth and people saying, that's a solid brother right there. That's a solid educator. He cares about his uh, students. He's no nonsense, but he's
Mhm.
going to do what's best for his teachers, for his parents, and for his staff, his teachers and support staff. And that's, I tell people, there's no reason for me to leave Central Arkansas because um, professionally, I've been blessed here, and really feel like that I've been blessed because I understand the responsibility of my roles and the roles that I have, and to whom much is given, much is expected, or um, I think I messed that scripture up. To
Who
whom
much
much
is
is given,
given, much is required. Yeah, I got you.
required.
I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So but I always believe that, and so it's you have to give your all each and every day, because our students lives are at stake. So
Gotcha. So I asked this question knowing that you're probably going to have a passionate answer about this. Talk about the importance of having a black man as an educator in education, because I know, isn't that like the lowest statistic? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it is. And I and you started off by saying how humble I am, and and I always want to be. I want to show the humility because I know that I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed to be where I am and have had the experiences because there's not many of us. When I was superintendent, um, there were probably seven, maybe eight in the state who look like me,
Hmm.
and the numbers are pretty much the same, the percentage wise, across the nation, and I think it's important, and that's why I always have to make sure I make the very best decisions and choices personally, professionally, because people are looking at me all the time, and that adds a different level of stress. But I realize that I have a responsibility to make sure that there are doors open for people who need those doors open. And so every position that I've had, I always made sure that I paid it forward. So I brought someone else with me, and created opportunities for me. I always believe that you may have a seat at the table, but if you don't use it, then you might as well not have a seat at that table. And I think opening doors and opportunities for others who wouldn't necessarily have those opportunities is important for me. And as a black male, it's important for me to see other black males, black females have those same opportunities, uh, because they're qualified to have it. But if they're not part of the conversation or included in the conversation, they're sometimes overlooked. And I really feel like that is even so much more important at the school level for Black educators to be in the school buildings, because our kids are sometimes overlooked the same way. If they're not part of the conversation, if they're not part of um, the discussion, then some of our kids don't have the same opportunities that others who do not look like them will have. And I think it's so important that we create opportunities that all students have the opportunity to succeed and to reach their potential. But it's going to take people who are not part of the norm to ensure that that happens. And I also think for me to be in this position and the positions that I've had, it opened doors, and it's just like when we had our first Black president, President Obama, and now having Senator Harris becoming our first African American vice president. It's People may not know you, but they see you, and then they realize because of you in the position you have, they see their potential. And I think that's where we have to remember is that we have a role in being a positive role model, because there's people looking at us that we will never know
Mhm.
that they're looking at us, but they're watching us and then basing their goals, their plans on what they see in us, and that's a responsibility. And so I think it's important that our young people, our young educators, see a diverse slate of leaders at the district level, state level, at the federal level, because that empowers them
Mm.
and moving toward their goals and their opportunities.
Factual, factual. All right, so I want to be respectful of your time. So leave us with words of wisdom for the students who are in high school listening to this, to the students that are in college at UCA, where we both graduated from, who are ascending into these new educating these teacher roles. Give them like words of advice that you would have liked somebody to tell you in that transition.
Never take no for an answer. If you and my pastor always tells me, if you can dream it,
Hmm.
then you can achieve it. If you are passionate about it, then you can achieve it. And so never let a closed door reroute your journey. Open it or create your own door and walk through
Mm,
it. And follow the journey that God has for you, because uh if he brings you to it, then he's going to ensure that you're going to go through it, and you're going to go through it successfully. And because I really believe that we are blessed in order to be blessings to others, and God is going to make sure that his people are blessed, because that's what he's called us to do, is to bless others. And I feel like that there we may have some stumbling blocks, but that's where the test becomes a testimony. And because it's how you approach, address, and deal with those tests that life gives you, those roadblocks, those closed doors. Do you just stop at that closed door,
mhm,
or do you burst in it, or do you redirect your journey? And I think that's what we have to always remember, that a delayed response is not a no,
mm,
and it's not an end to your journey. It's just not your time for that path on your journey. And so I always feel like that, if I always tell educators that you're in education for a reason, and it's not just for your personal reason. It's to be a blessing to the young people that you come in contact with, and to the people that you work alongside, because a lot of times they need to see positive role models as well. So
ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Dr. Jeremy Owoh. Man, I appreciate you so much for dropping all these gems. You brought a lot of gems as far as education, but you dropped a lot of personal gems as well that everybody can take for. So I appreciate you for that. If you are listening to this on iTunes, hey, give us that 5-star review. Go ahead and hit that subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, smash that like button, comment your favorite part, comment flames all over this, and share this with somebody who really, really needs this, because this one is a good one, especially if you are looking to get into a career in education. But we're coming to you each and every single Thursday, helping you pursue and create your version of the good life. Until then, we'll see you next week.